Welcome to the Cannabis Investor Series, as we present a first-hand look into the rapidly evolving cannabis industry and the opportunities that lie ahead. Hi, welcome to the Cannabis Investor Series. I'm your host, Barrington Miller, and today I am here with Charlie Bachtell, co-founder and CEO of Cresco Labs. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Barrington, great to be here.
Now, if you're just tuning in or listening for the first time, the Canadian Securities Exchange is running a 4-week-long expose and celebration into the cannabis and cannabis industry. Companies like Cresco help define the industry and help define what's going on in the United States as far as a multi-state operator. But that's what I know. Now, in case you don't know who Cresco is and what it is they do, Charlie's going to tell you. Go ahead, Charlie.
You started the summaries right. We're a multi-state operator in the U.S. Based out of Chicago, and with the recent closing of the Florida acquisition, we're now in 10 states. So we have a 10-state footprint, primarily vertically integrated. Some states we're not, but primarily vertically integrated. Focus on highly regulated markets, and also while vertically integrated and proficient in all aspects of it, we do prioritize the brand building and the distribution of branded products side of the business. So a pretty traditional CPG approach to cannabis.
Brand building has been important from day one, and in the past year, it's probably been even more so. Can you just delve into that and what it means behind the Cresco brand?
Yeah, for us, we looked at the cannabis space from the very beginning. A couple of things were pretty obvious to us. It was never going to be less regulated. This is back in 2013, right? It was never going to be less regulated. It was always going to be moving in this furthering direction, whether that's state legalization, federal legalization, et cetera, which brings regulations with it. That cannabis was CPG, whether it knew it at the time or not. Cannabis was not going to continue to be sort of served deli style, weighed out in front of you where you could touch it and feel it and smell it. It was going to be prepackaged. It was going to be third-party tested, prepackaged, whether that's child-resistant packaging or otherwise, tamper evident, sealed, cased, and shipped. And third thing that was pretty obvious to us was really the only thing that the industry needed was somebody that could help normalize it and professionalize it. If it was going to go from where it was in 2013 to where we all know that this industry can go, it needed to be normalized and professionalized. So, for us, brand building, it's the great long-term upside opportunity as this does start to look more and more and more like traditional CPG. But it's also a great downside risk mitigator. If you look at certain aspects of the value chain or the supply chain, you could just see how at some point in time with changes in regulations, there's potential for disruption on the certain sides of the value chain, whether that's pure cultivation or whether that's brick and mortar retail. And for us, we wanted to make sure that we put ourselves in a position to have a long-standing, sustainable, viable business model. So brand building really became the focus of us. But of course, like I said, you got to be vertically integrated today. You got to do all aspects of the supply chain, because there is no established secure supply chain that you can run. You've got to be pretty independent and self-reliant at this stage of the industry.
Thanks for that, Charlie. Now, I know you as Cresco and Illinois. As you mentioned, you're now touching or involved in 10 different states. But I want to talk about Illinois and what that means as far as a regional play in comparison to West Coast and California versus the East Coast and New York. And what is special about Illinois and how is it different than the other areas?
We could talk for a long time about Illinois. One of the things I'm proud of the state for displaying thought leadership over the last 8 years in really impacting the way that this industry develops. Illinois, back in 2013, when it passed its compassionate use Medical Act, it was a game changer. That they really did create generation two of cannabis in the US, which was highly regulated, compliance focused, and sort of a controlled, limited license type environment that you had to earn your way into. You had to sort of you had to compete in merit-based application processes. And so that approach to cannabis really was the start of the normalization and professionalization, right? When they really wanted to make sure that this was true medical program with professional operators and a way that they could make sure that this type of industry walked before it ran. And then they backed that up in 2019 when they developed another kind of game-changing adult use structure. First state in the U.S. to pass an adult use law through the legislative process, not through a ballot initiative or voter referendum. So it was very thoughtful, it was very thorough, and it prioritized social equity and restorative justice, and then followed that with a focus on the tax and regulate side of it. And again, game changing. It's been now the model for, and I think it will continue to be for any new adult use law that gets passed in the U.S. is gonna prioritize a more inclusive, diverse social equity approach to the industry. So enough about Illinois and how, I am proud. It's my home state and resident here. So I like the approach that it's brought to cannabis. It's why I'm in the industry. If Illinois hadn't done what it did in 2013, I would not be in the industry. So I have to give it a lot of credit. But what you're seeing is a very robust adult use market here develop in a very short period of time because of the thoughtfulness and also because of the level of execution that you have. That is sort of founded and operated, headquartered, I should say, in the state. You've got arguably probably 5 of the 10 premier companies in the entire industry, regardless of country, all started here in Chicago. So, $1 billion plus run rate in the first year of adult use. So it's a successful model. Of course, there's still room to improve in areas where they need to catch up. But a great model, great program. It's nice to be part of the development of it, right? And be based out of here and be able to obtain the #1 market share position, which is what we try to obtain in every market that we're in. This is the first one. So Illinois is great. It acts as sort of a nice hub in the Midwest of the country. And it is kind of a bridge between the West and the East. So it'll have a prominent role in cannabis going forward. Now, as you get into the other regions, though, there definitely, there's value in the Northeast, there's value in the Southeast, there's definitely value out West. So for us, our growth strategy has always been pretty simple and straightforward. It's to create the most strategic geographic footprint we can. And then to obtain meaningful material market positions in each of those programs. And really that's a top 3 market share position. So you'll see from our 10-state footprint, we have all 7 of the states that are ranked in the top 10 from a population standpoint in the country that have cannabis programs. We're in all 7 of them. And again, we're now, top 3 market share positions, including pending acquisitions. 3 of those markets will have top 3 positions. In California, we've got a top 3 distribution position in, so that'd be a 4th. That's our model. Strategic states that have good regulations and big populations behind them, so they can support robust markets, and then top 3 market share is what we aim for.
Well, thank you for that. And much credit should be given to Illinois and as well for your company and for you for working alongside in that process. Now let's shift over to New York State. And New York went legal a few weeks ago. What does that mean for the state, and what does that mean for the industry and for Cresco?
It's big. I think it would. You can't overstate the importance of a state that is as influential as New York making this move, right? There's a few states that, and again, being from Illinois and based in Illinois doesn't necessarily always be, act as the game changer, the thought leader. There are other states that definitely, from a cultural standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a policy standpoint, tend to lead the way in progress. And I think you can put California in that category for sure, and I think you absolutely can put New York in that category. You're talking about financial, media, cultural hub of the U.S. and right up there in the world in those same categories. So the fact that New York figured out a way to do it, and again through the legislative process, which is it's a lot more difficult to pass something through the legislature than it is to just get a popular vote on it. And so for New York to figure out how to say yes, give enough yeses to the stakeholders that are sitting at that table to get that bill through Albany, really meaningful. And the impact that I think it has not only on sort of the current cannabis industry will be really impactful, but I think more states will now look at it and go, look, New York's done it now. They figured out a way to do it. We need to figure out a way to do it. And I think at a federal level, again, New York has a lot of influence over policy, and I think it'll be very helpful. Not only just as the legislators are debating this issue and kind of how to do it, and I think New York is going to set a very nice example on how to structure it. But again, the influence that the financial epicenter of really the world, being in New York, can have on some of these next stages of policy as it relates to U.S. cannabis is big. So whether that's banking reform or even just broader, again, sort of moves towards legalization, I think New York has a lot of influence in those areas. So it's going to have a meaningful impact for sure.
For our audience, if you're listening, we had the privilege of doing an interview with a group, the Happy Monkey, and we discussed a little bit about New York legalization. One of the areas that drew concern or pause or hesitation was the social equity piece and how that's going to be managed, how that's going to be rolled out. Charlie and his team have experience and are very, very involved with the social equity program. Can you talk a little bit about that? And you touched on it earlier and the importance of it, but let's just go a little deeper into that.
Yeah, I think at the highest level, right? This is one of the very interesting dynamics of cannabis. Is you've got this subject matter that's been illegal now for generations. You've had laws at a federal level and at a state level on the books that now data is showing in the last. Of course, I think this is sort of a known entity for a long time, but the data that's now the epidemiological studies that are showing this disparate impact that the application of those drug laws have had on certain communities, it's profound. And it's one thing when cannabis, like back in 2013, when Illinois was passing that Compassionate Use Act, and it was medical and it was very hyper focused on a set of specific conditions, and you're talking about epilepsy and you're talking about cancer. I don't know at that stage whether or not the social equity aspect or the disparate impact of application of drug laws at the time was as front and center as either it should be or potentially even, again, maybe not. You're talking about strict compliance focused medical back then. The second you start talking about just being over the age of 21, and that this is for reason or sort of responsible adult use, and you're not talking about epilepsy anymore, you're not talking about cancer, you have to address this issue. That dynamic is it's inextricably tied to progress for cannabis in this country. So again, proud that certain states are addressing this now at that legislative level, and from a regulatory standpoint, creating opportunities to create a more inclusive, diverse industry. This wonderful opportunity that very rarely ever comes up, where something that has caused devastation can literally do a 180 and be an incredible opportunity to create positive change. Not many examples of something like that that you can easily point to. Cannabis is squarely right there. I mean, it is a model of something that has devastated certain communities over the last generations that now could actually be an incredible opportunity for positive gain. And it's good that legislators are acknowledging this, and again, all stakeholders are making it known that needs to be a part of this. I will say though, in the limited experience that the industry has in addressing this issue, it is easier said than done. There's no doubt about it. It's complex, and there are a lot of moving pieces in how to do it the right way, right? It's not, the question isn't whether to do it. The question, and I don't like to overgeneralize, but very few no's are out there anymore on whether or not we should have a more progressive view on cannabis and whether or not legalization of some type is appropriate. Very few no's in the room at this point. Tons of yeses. How is where the opinions come in, and there are diverse opinions. We haven't seen anybody do this perfectly yet by any stretch. Again, Illinois laid out a good outline, and the structure of the program is I think has great intent, and I think it was well structured. The application of it, the administration of it has been very challenging. And so again, I think New York is going to have an opportunity here to learn from the prior states that have done this, primarily Illinois, really, and try to figure out how to do it better and make sure that not only is the structure good and the intent good, but the actual administration of it is solid. And look, I'm big on knowing, where it's appropriate to, use certain voices are more appropriate for certain platforms than others. The one thing that I know that we can do as Cresco Labs and even my peer set is we can make it known that we're going to be positive contributors to the administration of this. And so from that standpoint, we're all in on helping create a successful application of the good intent, and whether that is through incubator programs, whether that is through funding seed capital programs that'll help get over these inherent humps and these hurdles that any business has to figure out how to get over in any industry, let alone in the cannabis space, where it is difficult to borrow money. It is difficult to raise capital. We can help these new businesses be successful. So, we're excited that we have another opportunity here with New York, try and get it better than even Illinois did it, both in design and in administration of it. And, just excited that we get another chance to do it in a meaningful way. So looking forward to see what develops here in New York and being a positive contributor to it.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. We're very, very grateful for the position that you've taken, for the position that Cresco has taken with this subject. And New York is one of those, it's such an important state and they have to get it right. And that's different than saying they have to get it perfect. They're not going to get it perfect. No one is, but they do have to get it right. And, they can learn from Illinois. They can learn from actually anywhere that's tried to implement, they can learn from, because there's good lessons and not so good. So I had you on the show 1 year ago, almost to the day. A lot has changed. I think we were 2 months into the pandemic.
Right.
What's changed at Cresco in the last year, and what do the next 6 to 12 months have in store for somebody who is a casual observer, somebody who's a new investor, or somebody who's been with you from day one?
Great question. How much time do we have?
Well, let's just start with what's happened in the last year.
I think in the last year we've a lot of maturity has occurred, and as I think everybody would hope. This industry is still very young in the grand scheme of things. We talk about cannabis years like they're dog years, but in the grand scheme of things, this industry is very young. It is a hyper growth industry. and there are some companies that are hyper growth companies that are really scaling operations and building these footprints in these states that matter, that'll create opportunities for tremendous long-term successful outcomes, shareholder value creation, all kinds of positive social change, everything. We're I don't know that we're any different in that respect, that a lot has changed at Cresco. Fundamentals are still as they've been. Business model itself hasn't changed, mission hasn't changed, but the way you go from here to there and the way you go from there to there, you need to mature, you need to grow, you need to become more diverse, you need to do all of these things that allow you to capture it. You need to build that leadership team that has to a certain extent has been there and done it, and can help pull the organization to where the organization wants to get to, as opposed to just sort of learning as you go and hoping that you can keep up with it. So in balancing those two sort of perspectives of the original foundation, those fundamentals, with how do we get to where we know that we need to get to, is the challenge. It's the puzzle that all of us are working to correctly solve. And I love the changes that we've seen in the organization over the year, the growth, the maturity, the culture that's developed. Scaling an hyper growth it will test any culture. It'll test any company. And then you layer on top of that global pandemic and really three distinct business models of, you've got your corporate kind of headquarter functions, you've got production facilities, you got brick and mortar retail. Those are all three very different kind of working environments. And so to manage change through all of those, with global pandemic, with just ways of working that had to change, it coincided for us. It coincided with an overall sort of migration to Cresco 2.0, which we started to develop in 2019 and really started to deploy in Q3, Q4 of 19. But 2020 was going to be a big year for us in rolling out even a new sort of an organizational structure, from a very centralized leadership approach to a more diverse and regionalized leadership approach. And all of that happened over the last year. And some parts of it, I would say, were stressed and challenged by remote working and the complexity of travel and all of that. Some aspects of it, I think, were actually enhanced and helped by it too. So I think one thing any operator in this space has to be able to do is you've got to be a wonderful creative problem solver. You've got to relish the chance to turn challenges into opportunities, and you've got to manage through change. And I would say that Cresco did it. I even just wanted to be very sort of quantitative about it, just based on growth and numbers, and Cresco did it as well, if not better, than anybody else last year. So very, very proud of it. Very proud of the team for accomplishing it. As we go forward, I think that's, we have, as I mentioned earlier, a fairly simple growth strategy that really is more focused on quality than quantity, right? And not being a mile wide and an inch deep, but being in very intentionally being in very targeted states that offer a ton of opportunity, and then maximizing those opportunities, right? Executing on the opportunities that are in front of you. I think you'll see more of that from us going forward. And as things change, whether at a state regulatory level or at a federal regulatory level, you can count on Cresco to be prepared to make the most of it, right? We built this company for long-term success. So even some of these more really dramatic changes that we're talking about might happen, and if not now, it's only a matter of when, not if. We built the organization to be able to not only be successful in the current environment, but we're intent on winning this long term too. So it's how we built the org, and I think it's what we've displayed over the last year. So I think you can count on that going forward too.
Well, Charlie, you are a scholar, you are a gentleman, and you are the CEO and co-founder of Cresco Labs. On behalf of the Canadian Securities Exchange, I want to say thank you to you, to your colleagues, your peers, the community, the state, and for what you are doing for the industry, what you've done for the industry, and what you are going to do for the cannabis industry. So thank you, Charlie. I've been your host, Barrington Miller from the Canadian Securities Exchange, and this has been an episode with the Cannabis Investor Series. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next episode. This is the Cannabis Investor Series.